So this is something I've only heard about fairly recently within the past week, and I haven't seen any of this being talked about on Twitter or like on TikTok or anything, specifically Tumblr, so please forgive me if this is outdated or it's information that is not correct, but the information I have at the moment is that Winston Smith was murdered in Minnesota. I'm not sure the exact city, but Winston Smith was murdered in Minnesota on June 3rd by federally deputized sheriffs. I've only seen it on Tumblr. I have reblogged anything that has come up on my Tumblr feed about that, and I've only seen a couple posts about it, so again, I apologize if that is outdated or incorrect, but that is the information I have right now, so please keep checking out the links down in the description, because if there's any news that I am missing, the Black Lives Matter movement link will be the first link that will give you information about that if it is something that other people know about that I don't have current information on. Hello Friendzies, welcome back to my channel. I am in a green look today and I have my little elf ears on because I am making a Zelda theory video. I made a video kind of like this. It was my concept for a Zelda game like a year or two ago, but this is a theory video I have because my brain has latched on to The Legend of Zelda again. I think it's because Skyward Sword, the HD remastering, is coming out in July. And I really liked Skyward Sword, and my hyperfixation of Zelda and all of the theory videos that I've seen a million times, like, hey, shout out to Zeltic, hey, you're one of my favorites. All the theory videos and everything I've been watching over and over again. A couple of my friends have recently picked up Breath of the Wild and have been playing it, so it's really exciting, and I have been going through my Hyrule Historia and Arts and Artifacts obsessively. So I have a theory that I have not seen anybody else talk about. If anybody else has made videos like this and you know about it, please tell me, because I'm not trying to copyright anything or steal anybody's ideas, but this is a theory that I have that, again, I haven't seen anybody else talk about. Zeltic, if you want to take it and do some more research and do it, hey buddy, hi, hello, let's collab sometime. Okay, so my theory specifically goes with Skyward Sword, because I was explaining Skyward Sword to one of my friends that recently picked up Breath of the Wild. They were really interested, and I was like, okay, well, both of us are whores for lore, so let's get into the lore. And my specific theory for Skyward Sword is that at some point, the Sheikah people lived in the Lanayru Desert, or the area of land that is the Lanayru Desert from Skyward Sword, and they are the ones that created the time shift stones and the ancient robots. So for those of you who don't know, who have never played Skyward Sword, essentially what the plot of Skyward Sword was that it was the absolute beginning of the Zelda timeline. It's what started the reincarnation and, you know, the three chosen characters that will always be battling each other and all hold pieces of the Triforce. That's basically what Skyward Sword was. And you live in a city in the sky, essentially, that was brought there by Hylia. And throughout your various journeys, you are able to go down onto the surface that is completely unexplored. It's like wildlands. You have the Faron Woods, the Elden Volcano, and you have Lanayru Desert. And your companion in Skyward Sword is the spirit of your sword, named Fi, and Fi tells you, you know, she's the companion that is in pretty much every Zelda game, you know, gives you helpful tips, tells you about different things. And what she tells you about Lanayru Desert is that at some point in ancient times, that Lanayru Desert was once a vast ocean. Which, totally fine, no problem. You don't know much other than that, but that's, you know, whatever. And there's various, structures. There's, a city of ruins, kind of, and there's lots of areas with these ancient robots. And there's a mining shaft and everything, and there are these things called the time shift stones, which I will put a picture up here. Pretty little stones that look very similar to some other things that we've seen in the Zelda franchise, especially recently. Also, what is in the Lanayru Desert is what is for this game, the version of this game, it is a version of the Temple of Time, and it looks more of a rudimentary structure. It is not our traditional Temple of Time. Usually our Temple of Time in Legend of Zelda are cathedral-like churches. Sometimes they are just sort of hubs. I believe in one of them, it's part of the castle, but it's the chapel off of the castle. So in Skyward Sword, the Temple of Time is more of a rudimentary structure. And you can tell it's the Temple of Time because it is signified specifically by the Hylian crest. The Temple of Time in other Zelda games have always been directly linked to the royal family. The Temple of Time has always seemed to house important artifacts that do directly affect the royal family. So the Master Sword in Ocarina of Time obviously directly affects the royal family because it would be the chosen knight or the chosen hero that helps them. You need specifically the Ocarina of Time to be able to access the Master Sword, and that is only in possession of Zelda, who is a member of the royal family. So it's interesting that it's directly connected to the royal family, because in Skyward Sword, Zelda does go to the Temple of Time in the Lanayru Desert, and Impa, who is her Sheikah guardian, as Sheikahs have been from the beginning of time, who have always been guardians of Hylia, of her reincarnations, of her ancestors, Impa and Zelda are seen together at the Temple of Time. And there's significant reason for them to be there in the Lanayru Desert. So, essentially, to kind of round that off a little bit easier, I should have scripted this, I'm so sorry. To round that off a little bit easier, where the Temple of Time will be, the royal family will be, and where the royal family will be, the Sheikah will be. So that's the location, along with Lanayru Desert. Lanayru Desert and, like, the main area that you discover, like, explore and discover is here, and the Temple of Time is like about here, so they're directly connected. As well as the time shift stones, as I've mentioned. They are also in the Lanayru Desert, along with the ancient robots. And what really sold it for me is the time shift stones, when activated, glow blue. And the ancient robots have, you know, they have their little bodies that move around, and the ancient robots only activate when you activate a time shift stone. The time shift stone, when activated, if you don't know, will put a certain radius. It's not like the whole area, but it's a certain radius, usually like fairly small. It activates a certain radius and puts that radius of where it is back into the past. So you're still in the present, but it's like a pocket of time travel, essentially. So all the ancient robots are falling apart. They've basically turned to dust. They're no longer useful when you're in the Lanayru Desert. But when you activate a time shift stone, they come back to life. And they start moving around and doing their little thing and mining. A lot of what we've seen in the Breath of the Wild is the Sheikah technology. And Sheikah technology, when dormant or not corrupted by the powers of evil and malice, glow blue. Orange as well, but they mostly glow blue. And the Divine Beasts, when you rescue the Divine Beasts and rescue the champions, glow blue. And their beams of light, they do turn into red when they are hitting Hyrule Castle, but they glow blue when they first are shot from the Divine Beasts. The ancient arrows are blue. The little bit at the end is blue. And just most things surrounding the Sheikah are blue energy. And like when you're, when you teleport, Link turns blue and he like teleports, and when you're in the Sheikah shrines, a lot of the like surroundings are blue and everything. And when you do the trial of the Master Sword, and every time you go to like the Sheikah monk room to like go up to the next step, it's mostly, you know, a blue theme with the blue energy and everything. Also, in Hyrule Historia, if I can find the direct picture or if I need to take my own, again, it's going to be right over there. In Hyrule Historia, when it's specifically talking about the time shift stones, there's a tiny little footnote in the corner that says, the Ocarina of Time seems to be made of the same material that the time shift stones are made of. So that's the point of my theory that I want to get to. I believe that at some point, the Sheikah tribe lived specifically in Lanayru Desert. And that wouldn't be very far-fetched, I don't think. Traditionally, any Sheikah that you see are in Kakariko Village specifically. However, that doesn't mean they haven't moved around in the past. Skyward Sword, the entire surface is completely unexplored. Nobody knows that, like, half of the things out there are out there, and what is mainly on the surface are monsters and races that are vagabonds, like the Goron. The Goron have nowhere to go. They don't live on Death Mountain at the time of this game because they're vagabonds and they've traveled from other places. And the only Sheikah character in the entirety of Skyward Sword is Impa. So it's not hard to believe that at some point their livelihood dwindled and went extinct, essentially, because that's not far-fetched for the Legend of Zelda games. The history of the Sheikah have always seemed to be very individual and the only one left. And that's happened in several Legend of Zelda games. But yeah, my theory is that at some point the Sheikah lived in Lanayru Desert. They created the time shift stones, because don't forget, with Breath of the Wild especially, the Sheikah are known to be extremely technologically advanced. In the time of Breath of the Wild, 10,000 years ago, the Sheikah had an age of prosperity where they created the Divine Beasts, they created the Guardians, the shrines, the towers, possibly the first version of the Sheikah Slate, although I'm not sure about that one. So it's not incredibly far-fetched to believe that in Skyward Sword, which in the time of the Breath of the Wild is considered a part of the Age of Myth, in Skyward Sword and every other Legend of Zelda game is also basically considered the Age of Myth because it is the absolute beginning of the world. It's not incredibly far-fetched that the Sheikah would have created the time shift zones and created the robots, because although they don't share too many similarities to the Guardians, they are still robots. And I'm not sure about Zelda games in the failed hero timeline and the adult era timeline, but from what I understand, the games I have played and the games I've kind of peeked into, robot workings have only been made by Sheikah. And then it also wouldn't be incredibly far-fetched that them having made the time shift stones, that they also would have made the Ocarina of Time, because again, the Sheikah are directly involved with the royal family, basically in all games, whether or not they are considered the interlopers, like from Twilight Princess, or if they are direct protectors, such as Impa from Ocarina of Time, they are directly connected to the royal family. So for them to make a tool, essentially, that would involve time travel, which would, again, link back to the time shift stones, that would involve time travel and be not heavenly created, but man-made, which is a direct connection to the goddess, which the Sheikah have, because they are protectors of the goddess's ancestor reincarnation, whichever, I think it works. And I'm sure, of course, that there are plenty of things that can, like, debuff this. This isn't 100% perfectly researched and everything, but that is my theory. My theory is that at some point, the Sheikah tribe lived in Lanayru Desert. They created the time shift stones. They created the ancient robots. They very much could have had a hand in created the Ocarina of Time, if not just did create the Ocarina of Time. And I think that that very well connects to what we know of the Sheikah now in Breath of the Wild. Breath of the Wild is the most knowledge we have of the Sheikah tribe, like, ever. And I'm pretty sure it's the most knowledge we have of the Gerudo as well, because the Gerudo are another tribe that has been kind of phased in and out of certain games. But yeah, that's my theory, is that the Sheikah created the time shift stones and the Ocarina of Time and the ancient robots. So it's kind of cool if that theory is correct, because it's like harking back to their ancestors from the very beginning of the timeline. Yeah, so that's my Zelda theory. I hope it wasn't too, like, bouncing all over the place. I did kind of had, like, a streamlined idea of what I wanted to say. I definitely should have scripted this, but please leave a like if you enjoyed it. And if you have any other Zelda theories, let me know. I'm so fascinated. Like I said, I watch Zeltake all the time. I've seen basically all of his Zelda theory videos and, like, Zelda history videos, because I'm a whore for lore, and Legend of Zelda lore is, like, my favorite fucking thing in the world. Yes, I am one of those people that are pretty okay with the Nintendo timeline. I totally understand people that aren't and, like, are like, well, no, because this proves that. I totally understand. I don't mind the Nintendo-made timeline. I know they kind of threw it together, but I don't mind it. I'm very excited for Skyward Sword to be remastered HD on the Switch. It's one of my favorite Zelda games. And I think the reason why any theories surrounding Skyward Sword specifically aren't talked about a lot is because I know not a lot of people were super fans of Skyward Sword, because that was the time of the Wii U, and the Wii U was not a good system to be putting out. The Wii U sucked. And I know the motion controls were a little frustrating for people. Like, I've played Skyward Sword a million times with one of my best friends, and he cannot do any of the flying, and he can do the sword fighting, but he can't do the flying, and he can't do any of the kind of, like, finessed things, like there's bomb bowling at some point, and then using the beetle to, like, fly into very tight spaces. He's not able to do that very well, so every time we've played, he's just handed it to me. Like, every time we go back in the sky, we need to fly the loft wing, I'm sitting there just, like, perfectly flying, and he's like, I hate it! We play it on the Wii too, so I don't know. I understand why a lot of people don't like it. It's one of my favorite Zelda games. I absolutely adore it, and I at some point plan this leg over here to do like a sleeve, and I want it to be Legend of Zelda themed. I want a goddess statue. I want a statue of one of the 7 heroines, maybe some of my favorite weapons, and I want something from Skyward Sword specifically. The goddess statue kind of goes back to Breath of the Wild, but I want something from Skyward Sword specifically because I adore it. It's a very wonderful game. But yeah, thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye! I'm gonna be getting some Panera for dinner.